I'm hoping I can leave you with 10 ways that you can potentially foster a culture that is going to support innovation within your organization. So the first thing that I always love to hit on is really mindset. It truly is a mindset of innovation. So the problem is we become more senior and more familiar with our areas and industries. We become experts in what we do. And we just continue to refine the same processes and practice. We tend to focus on execution and refining our execution as opposed to focusing on innovation. Things are working, so why change? Change is seen as risky. And all this unfortunately leads to inertia. So I encourage you to think back to when you were a child. When you were a child, you constantly asked why. You challenged the world. You didn't accept anything around you or what your parents told you as fact. You were naturally curious. So we need to find ways that we can bring that curiosity back to the workplace. I'm very fortunate at Google because we have a culture of continually challenging the norms. It's actually considered an expectation. We really believe that what got you here is not what is going to get you there. No one wants to be sitting around this boardroom table. It's just too easy to continue doing what you're doing because it's what you know. And if you do that, that's when you see that you end up being disrupted. Let's think about in the taxi industry and how Uber disrupted them, the hotel industry and how Airbnb disrupted them, retail disrupted by Amazon, Netflix disrupted Blockbuster. The examples go on and on. So it's truly key to have this mindset about innovation. The next thing, which I believe is critical, is focusing on your users. So who's using your product or service? Who are you partnering with? Is it companies? Is it individuals? Who are your potential users that you potentially have not tapped? These people are a huge source of innovation. We spend extensive time with our users. In the pre-corona days, we would go out in the field and we would watch people use our products and services. Today, we do it via Zoom and via Google Meet. We do interviews, we do surveys. We want to understand what's working, what's not working, what our users love, what are some of the things they want to see. It's really an amazing opportunity to understand their unmet needs and how we can create new products and services to really further their desires. So as I mentioned, we go out in the field, we do focus groups, interviews, diary studies. These are key ways that we can understand and drive innovation from the people who we're creating our products and services for. I had a recent example which was very enlightening for me at Google, and it never ceases to amaze me. As much time as I spend going out and spending time discussing and chatting with our users, I always learn something new. So recently we were focusing on the accessibility of our products, ensuring that our products can be used by everyone across a range of abilities. And we were spending some time with a blind user who was using one of our products. And very quickly, myself and my colleagues realized that this user could not complete any of the critical tasks that were required for them to use this product effectively. And the sense of empathy that we all had in watching this very painful experience as someone tried to use a screen reader and kept stumbling and kept hitting these roadblocks. And we came away from this session not just feeling like, okay, there's some bugs that we need to fix in the product because of the screen reader, but we came away feeling completely inspired of, it's not just about fixing those bugs, but maybe there are different ways we can allow this user to engage with the product. Maybe instead we should be focusing on better voice assistive mechanisms that can help this user use the products. And had we not spent time with this user, we wouldn't have come to those realizations. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is to spend time with the people you're developing your products and services for. Building the right team. absolutely key. We talk a lot at Google about diverse collaborative teams produce the best outcomes. And when we talk about diversity, we mean in terms of age, gender, race, background, also roles and skill sets. So typically, as I try to pull teams together, I come from the field of user experience, but I also try and pull in product managers who are focused on the business side of the equation, engineers who ultimately need to build what I may be dreaming up, sales who has to sell it. And it means when we get together, we're all coming to the table with these diverse and different perspectives, and we see the problem in a different way. And it ultimately creates this really healthy tension, which will allow us to realize the best outcomes. Otherwise, I would probably come up with a solution that's going to be very oriented towards the ultimate user experience, but it may be too complicated to sell. It may take too much time to build. So having a diverse set of perspectives is really, really important. This sounds obvious, but it's really key to operate with transparency and trust. And it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, ensuring that those teams who you pull together very much have a collaborative mindset. This is the only way you're going to get the best outcomes. It means there's a shared vision. There's no hidden agenda. There are no secret meetings. You have to avoid a culture where information is power. And especially when you have diverse groups of people coming together, they may live in different parts of the organization. They may include partners or different companies that we work with. And we have to have this mindset of transparency and openness, which means there's a constant sharing of what is going on, what is happening, status, challenges, being open about the problems that we're facing. Too often people want to sweep the challenges under the rug, and it's really important to be open about the things that are happening and how projects are progressing. At Google, we do something which allows us to establish a really clear project vision for all of our projects, and we develop what we call shared OKRs, objectives and key results. And we own these as a team, so it means we either win together or we lose together. We also very much embrace the mindset of disagree and commit, which means we don't always need to agree. A healthy debate is actually a very good thing. But when we come to a decision, we're all going to align to that decision and move forward. And I think these are very fundamental practices in helping drive innovation. Another key thing that we think about at Google is thinking 10x. It's really easy when you're trying to focus on innovation to think about the small incremental changes, the things that may be 10% improvements. Instead, we want to go big. We want to think about the impossible. We want to think about the things that could create a 10x improvement, 10 times what we're doing today. One of my favorite examples within the company is something called Project Loon. We had a critical part of our mission, which is bringing internet access to everyone around the globe, which means not just big city centers, but also smaller rural areas. And if we were going to go with a 10% solution, our answer would have been, okay, well, let's lay more fiber, more cable in all these locales. But instead, there was a focus on this radical solution of what if we used balloons to bring internet to different parts of the locales? And that is actually the solution that launched. Instead of laying cable, which potentially could have been very slow and not realistic to do in certain locales, these balloons, which have access to these rural locations, are providing internet to places that otherwise would never have it. So it's really important to try and think big and bold. Another important shift is to accept that innovation can come from anywhere. Often companies are relying on the CEO or top executives top down to tell them the ideas. And I think that's actually one of the worst strategies. It's not to say that innovation cannot come from there, but it goes back to that earlier point about diverse teams. You need to think about different places that innovation can come from. People with different tenures. You may be 1 year at the company, you may be 10 plus years at the company. You have different perspectives and different ways you see the problem. Different levels of seniority. I think too often we rely on people who are more senior to drive innovation, when in fact, it's the new people who are fresh out of college that may have these brilliant ideas that you just would not realize if you're someone who's been in the workforce for a longer period of time. We often also rely often on our own departments. You know, in my case, I work in ads and commerce, and thinking if we're going to innovate within that space, then the people need to come from that department. Whereas in fact, some of our best ideas come from the search team, or they come from the maps team. And locations are also key. Particularly, we think about this a lot at Google. The majority of us are working in Silicon Valley, and that's a very strange bubble, and it doesn't necessarily represent reality. So to tap on ideas from different locales is just so important for us. And this is often uncomfortable for people, especially when you think about taking an idea from the intern. So you need to find forms and mechanisms and ways that these ideas can come to light. Google is particularly known for something called 20% time, which means people can take 20% of their time and work on anything that they're passionate about. They can have these little skunk work projects where they're picking away at something, and it doesn't matter if it is in their department or not. It doesn't matter what level they are. Anyone can do this. We also have a whole host of incubators across the company which foster ideas, have people bring proposals forward of cool ideas, and then the company will invest them. So it's about finding these mechanisms that you can allow people who may be less tenured, less seniored, in different groups to bring the ideas to light. A couple of really great examples from Google. One is Gmail. Gmail came to life because it was an engineer just picking away at the side, had this idea about how email could be much, much better. And now it is a product that billions of users are using. Recently, within my organization, someone who was quite junior came forward with the idea of how we could recruit more Black and Latinx employees, an area where we're falling behind, and had this brilliant new approach. And if it wasn't for the mechanisms that we had in place, I probably never would have seen this idea from someone who's quite junior and new to the company. And it's something that we are actually rolling out. So accepting and looking for ideas throughout your company and organization is so important.